Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Father Ted Talks. Today, I want to talk about a very common concern amongst many Orthodox Christians who have come to me and they voiced their opinion that, how do I forgive, Father? I can't seem to forgive this specific individual who's done something horrible to me or has really, really hurt me or my family. How do I forgive, right? And so forgiveness in the church is one of the most common concerns for Orthodox Christians. Both those who come to confession often and even those who perhaps have never been to confession before. So when somebody asks me that, how do I forgive somebody who has really, really wronged me, right? My response often is, where my mind goes, at least for myself, is I look to the parable of the servant who was forgiven in Matthew 18. And this is a beautiful parable where Christ kind of gives the example of a servant who owed his master 10,000 talents. Now, in the ancient times, 10,000 talents is a lot of money. 1 talent is like a chest of gold coins, about 1,000 gold coins. So, 10,000, coins, 10,000 coins is a number that is beyond anybody's wealth at that time, right? It would be the equivalent of being the richest person in the world, right? So it is a sum that is beyond measure. That's what it means in the parable, right? So this servant owes this exorbitant sum to his master, and the master calls his servants who need to settle accounts with him. And of course, this servant comes up to the master. He falls on his knees and he says, "Master, be patient with me, and I will repay you everything. Please have mercy on me. Don't throw me into prison. Don't throw my family into prison or into servitude, as was usually the practice back then." And the master, he has compassion on this servant, and not only does he show leniency to him, but he forgives the whole debt, which is an amazing thing. It is this kind of ultimate and pure love that God has for us, right? That he forgives the whole debt, the 10,000 talents. This debt that nobody else could ever pay. He forgives it and he lets this servant go on his way. And so what happens is that we have this example of this beautiful, love that God gives, this expression of forgiveness that God gives to us, which he gives to all of us with his mercy and all our multitude of sins, the 10,000 talents of sins that we have. What does this servant do after that in the parable? Well, he leaves and he goes out into the street and he sees another of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. 100 denarii is nothing. It's like, if you're talking about millions and millions of dollars, this is the equivalent of like $100. It's minuscule compared to the debt that he himself was forgiven. And he sees this fellow servant who owes him this small amount, and he grabs him by the throat and he says, "Pay me what you owe me." And this servant, his fellow servant, he also falls down at his friend's feet, and he says, "Have patience with me, and I will pay off the debt. Just give me time and I will pay you back everything." And what does this servant do? He says, "No, I don't accept it. I will not show you leniency." And he had this man taken and arrested and thrown into prison until he could pay off every last penny. So obviously this man, who was forgiven 10,000 talents of debt by his master, was not willing to extend this forgiveness and this compassion to somebody else who owed him even a small amount. Of course, his master, who forgave him the debt, hears about this and he brings the servant back and he says, "You wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt and you couldn't even forgive your fellow servant of the small debt that he had. And because of this, you will be thrown into prison until you pay back every single penny," which basically means forever. Of course, a metaphor for eternal damnation. And so, I think of this parable every time somebody asks me about how to forgive, because every time somebody ever wrongs me, the first thing that I want to do, of course, as a human being, is to think negative thoughts about them, to judge them, to harbor resentment against them. But then I think that I am that first servant, and God has forgiven me so many times and continues to forgive me so many times. And I have the audacity not to forgive another human being who's done less to me than I have ever done to other human beings. This pricks my soul. It wounds me in a very, very important way, in a very powerful way. And at that moment, when I think about this, my anger and my resentment go away. They melt away. And I think, who am I to judge that other person? Yes, I may be angry in that particular moment. I may have some anger or some resentment, but immediately I think about my own sins. And this is what Christians are called to do, to think about their own sins first, especially when other people wrong them. even if that person has wronged them more than we have wronged others. That's not the point. The point is that we have been forgiven, and we've experienced this beautiful forgiveness from our spiritual fathers, from other human beings. God has shown grace in our lives. He has shown us His love and has accepted us, unworthy though we are, to be in His church and to be part of His family. And yet we can't even extend that to another human being. So as the apostle says, we love because God loved us first, and we could say that we forgive because God forgave us first. And if Christ forgave us from the cross, can we do any less for our fellow human beings? And this is the type of thing that I always think about, this beautiful parable of the master forgiving his slave, his servant, and how that servant was not able to extend that. And this is one of the most ugliest things that we do to each other, that we cannot extend that beautiful forgiveness to others. And the church is all about this. It's about accepting each other and understanding that all of us are broken and that God is the ultimate giver of forgiveness. And so we go to church, we go to confession so that we can receive that beautiful acceptance and forgiveness. And then we take that experience of being broken, but not being rejected, but rather being shown love and acceptance by the priest and by the church. And we take that feeling, that beautiful experience, and we try to apply it to our other relationships so that this kind of feeling spreads to others on and on and on. This is one of the goals of the church, of how to forgive one another. And it starts with these beautiful parables that Christ gives to us. So again, forgiveness has to be something that first we experience. This is why it's so important to go to the church, and it's so important to participate in confession. And once we've experienced that true forgiveness, then we know how to extend it to others. And if we don't, then this is a failure of ourselves. It's not a failure of the person who wronged us. It doesn't matter how many times somebody else wrongs us. It's a failure of us that we have not learned how to forgive properly. And harboring all that resentment and all that anger, it doesn't affect the other person. It only affects us. It doesn't matter if we do harm to them, or we go after them, or we try to slander them, or we try to ruin their reputations, or try to do whatever we want to do to make them pay for what we feel they've done to us. All those things, in the end, we might hurt them a little bit, but really we are hurting ourselves. A wise priest once told me that, when we hate other people, it is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. We are only hurting our own souls. And so it is even in our best benefit and our best interest to forgive, just like Christ forgave us. We should pass that forgiveness on to others. Till next time, take care and God bless.